Good evening on what is a mild, bright and sunny day. It is Saturday, April the 14th, and I'm in the reading nook with a nice hot cup of tea. So I thought that I would do another reading roundup to show you what I've been reading of late, what I've been sort of like thinking about and reviewing. So the first thing on my list, on my pile, is Mythago Wood by Robert Holdstock, a World Fantasy Award winner from 1984. In fact, I think the inaugural award-winning novel for that award, which I read as part of the Grognard Fowles book club, and we all mostly enjoyed it. Some of us thought it was okay, thought it was a bit uneven, but I really enjoyed it, and I'd be interested to find out what the other books in the Mythago cycle are, if I can find time to read them. But this is an absolutely interesting sort of story of myths imprinting on people and being enforced by them and so on, and drawing back into the ancient history, certainly of the British Isles, as it were. But there's indications within the setting that there are other Mythico generating deep old woods as well. So I thoroughly recommend that. A couple of things I read this week for Lamentations of the Flame Princess Weird Fantasy Roleplay. This one, Asterion, I didn't like at all. I can best describe it as a sex dungeon. Essentially, sort of like it takes the Greek myth of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth and sexes it up to not a very pleasant result. And I don't overly like the writing. I don't like the attitude of the author. Essentially, he is saying, I'm not going to write scenarios as other people write them. I don't tell you how to play a game. Well, then you're kind of missing the point of what a scenario is and what it's published for. In my opinion, don't like that at all. But again, that one I have a review of, but it's not been published yet. That's in a few weeks. A Gift from Norway. Better than this, much better than this. Actually, much nicer produced as well. Even though it's really a very sort of like very narrow kind of adventure that essentially unleashes a. I like to do actually like the cover there. That's really fantastic. But it unleashes a big monster upon Norway if the player characters decide they're going to be too curious and follow through with the whole thing that the actual bad guys want, which essentially is what the player characters are kind of hired to find the heart of Hrungnir, a Jotun, a giant of Norse myth who is dead, but his body forms this mountain, and if they can essentially plug the heart, this piece of the heart back in, it'll activate him. And that's meant to be a gift for all of Norway in terms of what the cult believes, but it's probably very much not in terms of what Norway, now a Christian country, would actually want. So the player characters can sort of like wander through this map, and if you're thinking that looks like intestines, you're about right. Up the alimentary canal, as it were, locate the gift, the heart, and take it all the way back, and you just get paid for it, and that's the adventure over and done with. Or they can meddle around and cause a disaster. It's a little bit, not very interesting. Let's have a look. Senet magazine. This issue came out winter 2022, so I'm a bit behind with reading this. But I am reading them and reviewing them, so like other things that'll be appear on the blog. But this is a really very good magazine devoted to board games. In this issue, there's a little bit more focus on role-playing games, which the magazine normally doesn't have. That's in part because there's an interview with Sir Ian Livingstone, the co-founder of Games Workshop. There we go, that's a better picture of him. Long-time editor of White Dwarf, designer of battle cards, among other board games, and of course co-creator of the Fighting Fantasy series. So you know, he had a book out at the time that was published of Dice and Men, which is about the early history of Games Workshop and his involvement in it. Very nicely done. I've done a review of that, and then there's Dark Punk, which looks at the artwork of Ewan Noor, who's best known for designing and illustrating Bourges, and then the role-playing game that was coming out at the time, Cyborg, which is its cyberpunk equivalent. So, if you've got an interest in board games and you can get hold of the copy of Senet, I do recommend it. You know, it typically has some, you know, some interesting articles, some interesting previews. So, for example, this issue's got an article on piracy, the theme of piracy in board games, and also upon the sort of like the deck building engine kind of mechanic. And then we get onto the reviews. You know, sort of like, you know, putting the illustration in the reviews to the board games to very nice effect. It's a good read, thoroughly worth getting if you are a fan of board games. Then Cthulhu Hack. This is the second edition, Just Crunch Games, which is it's a standalone role-playing game of investigation and cosmic horror in Lovecraft's sanity-shattering universe. It's very clear-orientated. It's designed so that you know, you only need to roll when something is critical, something is important, and it's got a really nice stripped-down feel to it. And it's interesting to note, what I liked about it was, okay, you know, you've got these headings in bold colours at the top, which, you know, it's just almost unlike any other Lovecraftian investigative horror role-playing game. It gives it very much an identity of its own, and it's got a good scenario in the back called Save Innsmouth, which I've actually individually reviewed because it's an expansion of an earlier scenario and works very well. And you get really fantastic illustrations of creatures like that. And you don't get many of them, but you get enough to get started. And there's plenty of expansions for this. I think there's a couple of 2 or 3 scenarios, and there will be more, I'm sure. But this is a very, for me, as far as I'm concerned, it's got a very pick up and play kind of quality. You can get started playing very quickly, because one of the things it does for your characters is it reduces them down to archetypes. So there we've got the ruffian and the philanthropist. So, you know, you've literally just got that. That's what you need to note down. Make some choices in terms of the special abilities and roll the stats. But that's it. You know, yeah, really very nice, slimmed down role-playing game with investigative horror. So, also what else? Oh yeah, Sanctum. Sanctum is a supplement for Heart, the City Below, or City Beneath, I should say. The role-playing game essentially where you are fascinated by what lies deep below, to the point that you go on dangerous delves. So it's all about the narrative of your and the danger of your dungeon experience, and it's a fantastic role-playing game. But Sanctum introduces the concept of actually having building up communities, having sanctuaries where you have a refuge which you're protecting and can invest in, which is something which is sort of at odds with playing to Heart, the City Beneath. But it shows the flexibility of the setting and the system. So really in here, what you are concerned with, essentially with the well-being of others, as more than you are necessarily of the delve. You're still going to go and delve because you want to go and deal with threats that might threaten your sanctum, that also you might need to go and negotiate or find resources which will help your community survive. So yeah, that's a nice idea. It's a different way to play Heart, the City Beneath. Okay, Rubble Redux, Insula of the Waning Moon. This is a supplement for RuneQuest role-playing in Garantha. It's come off for the Johnstown Compendium, and this is essentially a location book for the Big Rebel, which is the old ruins of the previous city that was basically reduced by war and invasion of trolls and so on in near Prax in Glorantha, and next door to it a tiny little city called New Parvis, literally is dwarfed by the walls surrounding the big rubble. It's sort of like it's just abutted it, and this is sort of like one of the city blocks to be found within the ruins of the big rubble. It looks, I'll show you a map of it. There we go. You can see that. So this is just a typical city block which was in the old city, and then it's describing, what is in the particular rooms, or what was in the particular rooms, what's the history of this city block design, the variations that are found of it across the various areas of the city and phases of it being built over the history of the city before it became the big rubble. And then it's got 4 little adventures as well, or adventures of varying sizes. It does expand on the locations a bit more. So, for example, it looks at them at that level of detail, and then the individual scenarios. You've got one, basically, dealing with a couple of types of vermin. You've got so essentially. We're dealing with a ball of snakes which are fighting each other, and then you've got like a ransom or a rescue mission to perform in the third, and then the fourth one, essentially you are providing an escort to some merchants and nobles who are going to a fight club located at this city block, and you've got to just you turn up, you're going to get paid, but then you discover that actually it's been run by Mordcants, who are the intelligent old race who are not very particularly liked by humans because they sort of eat humans, or a variation of humans that aren't intelligent, who are basically running like a slave, not a slave ring, but it's essentially a gladiatorial combat using slaves. So it's up to the player characters how they react to that. So that's a little bit more difficult to use. But in general, this is generally a good quality book, and I think it adds a lot of detail and flavour to a location which you can slot into your Big Rebel campaign if you're running one there. The Big Rebel Pavis will be coming to a bit more of a focus in general for ring-based role-playing in Glorantha. I think it's going to be next year. Because Robin D. Laws is working on a Parvis campaign, Big Rubble campaign set there. But you can still find a lot of the information available if that's where you want to set your campaign. And lastly, what I've been reading, and what I'm actually reading through at the moment, is the Rar and Glory starter set from Cubicle 7. This is the new starter set. Spielish's Ulysses Spieler produced one 2019, something like that, and it wasn't very well received. This is the new one that's just come out and is a whole lot better, a whole lot more fun. I'm enjoying reading it, and it's designed to teach you the kind of setup in the game, how to play the characters. It's got a scenario in there, it's got some background on essentially explaining where the role-playing game is set in the 41st millennium. And then the background book has also got it's got 5 or 6 detailed scenario hooks, which is once the game master has run the core scenario in this book, in this box set, then he can go and run those. So he's got like a mini campaign of sorts there. It's modelled very closely on the publisher's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition starter set, which is very, very good, and very recommend that. But I mean, I've done an unboxing of this already, but just to show you what you get in there. So you got some dice, and then there's this sheaf of a separate thing. So you've got like a read this first thing, which, okay, flip that open, gatefold. Here's all the basics you need to know about the game. It's not really going to tell you essentially how to play the game, how to run the game, but it introduces you to all the core concepts. And it's sort of like, look at this first. And then after that, if you're a player, you're going, right, what do I need to look at next? These. And these are the character folders. So if I take let's look at this is the Space Marine Scout. and you've got the like on there his background, and it tells you that don't open this unless you're absolutely sure you're going to play this character, and then you open up, and you've got all the details you need about the character, background, connections, secrets. That's why you don't want anything there to learn anything about that until you've decided you're actually going to play them. Each one of these characters, and then explanations of abilities and equipment over here. So, and then you've just got, the adventure, source book, and some tokens, and then some reference cards as well. But it's a really kind of game-packed box, which I like, because in the past starter sets have been rubbish. You're just going, oh, there's an adventure and the rules in here, some dice, that's it. These days, a starter set, if the publisher knows what it's doing, and most do, we give you a whole lot more like that. So, for example, if you have a Chaosium starter sets, each one of those has got, solo adventure, adventure for two or three players, and then an adventure for sort of like 5 or 6 players. And it does the same kind of thing with the RuneQuest starter set, a solo adventure, then a smaller adventure, and then a couple of bigger adventures that everyone can play. This doesn't quite do that. There's no solo adventure. It's designed to be a communal, shared experience in that initial playthrough with the scenario, but you are getting your money's worth this, I think. So yeah, so that's all that I have been reading this week. Not quite sure yet what I'm going to be reading next week, because this doesn't take into account the things like the PDFs that I read each week, and there's usually a couple of those on top as well. I don't do a lot of PDF reading because, I've got all of this to read. But I do make the effort to include a couple each week, typically from the Miskatonic repository, because there are lots of good Call of Cthulhu scenarios on there. But yeah, that's everything that I've been reading this week. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this reading roundup. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more videos from me, typically unboxings, but then the occasional reading roundup, such as with all this, which I will talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another reading roundup. I'll be back again soon with a proper unboxing. Bye for now.